From inside the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and John Meoli live on a Tuesday in August. We got a lot to talk about on today's show. We're going to look back at the trade deadline, look at the 16 guys that the Orioles got back, and break down where they landed in the Orioles system. We'll also talk about one outfield prospect that we've been waiting to see. That's Dylan Beavers. Why hasn't he been called up to Baltimore yet? We'll discuss, and then we'll talk about another outfield prospect, a former prospect, Heston Kjerstad. How much concern should we have for the guy who is in AAA Norfolk? All that and much, much more. But first, get a quick word from our sponsor.
For the fifth year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
All right, John, we are going to go back and look at the trade deadline from last week. If you haven't already listened to our episode from last week, I highly suggest you do so. Anywhere that you get your podcasts, you can also watch it back. We had Danielle Allentuck and Kyle Goon on our show, and we were live reacting to the Charlie Morton trade, and we were breaking down all of the moves that the Orioles had made. It is a marathon episode, but it is well worth the listen. By the way, write us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and I will read it out here on the show. But we're going to look back at those 16 prospects and kind of talk about where they fit in the system. But first, John, back in March, the day was March 26th. The weather was cold. Our spirits were high as baseball was around the corner. And we were looking ahead to what we expected to be a very good, very fun, positive, winning Orioles season. We were making our Orioles predictions. We each predicted this team would be a playoff team. I went as far as to say this team would win 95 games.
They played 95 plus.
They certainly have.
They have played more than 95.
So they didn't at least quit halfway through the season. That's good. But we were making our predictions, and 49 minutes into the podcast, John, I'm wrapping up, and you decide to jump in with a little hypothetical. I'm going to play a clip from that podcast right now. Yes, we could be completely wrong. They win 80 games, and we look like idiots, and you can play this back.
Here's a fun way to end it. Better way.
Yeah.
This team has like somewhere between 70 and 90 pending free agents. Imagine if this goes completely to hell, like the trade deadline sell off.
Oh my God. Don't think about it.
Just imagine trading all of these pending free agents in the span of like a week in July. All the graphics you'll have to make, all the getting to know like prospect YZ from
that would be horrible. Let's not think that way.
Just think about it. That would be tremendously bad for everything about our lives, but it would be great content.
It would be great content. John, why'd you say that?
Well, I don't know, but that's pretty much what happened.
That is exactly
what happened. As I'm like planning out, like when can I get to Delmarva to learn one thing about Boston Bateman?
How has it affected your life already? I mean, you're making plans to go to Salisbury to leave your family and take a 2-hour excursion.
Yeah,
to the Eastern Shore.
I have remembered what it was like in 2018. Like I basically stopped going to Camden Yards at one point. Like I would travel when I had to travel, and when I was home, I'd be like, there was a day that I went to Harrisburg to see a Sunday afternoon doubleheader that Dean Kramer and Dylan Tate started both frames of.
Wow,
that was a good time. There was like, Bruce Zimmerman's pitching today. I got to see Bruce Zimmerman. It's I did it like Rome is in Delmarva. Like I'm going to talk to the Rome Braves coaches about JC Encarnacion. Like I was all over everything. And like, that's part of my own personal process. Like you can't see, A, I'm not a scout. B, you can't see everybody all over, but like, I like to at least know what I'm like, have like a mental image of like how a player is if I'm going to rank them for Baseball America. So like my goal at this point is there's probably like a half dozen guys out, excluding the draftees, that I would really like to like see play baseball in the next month, 5 weeks, whatever. And that's going to be incredibly hard considering now I have like many more jobs and children and a lot more overhead than I did when I needed to do that last time. So but it's also just like, I think there was like personally, and I don't know if you felt this way, there was like a clearing event of like the stress of this season when Brandon Hyde got fired, and then it kind of like dissipated, and now it's really dissipated.
Yes. Yeah.
Like this is all just, you know, I'm listening to the game last night and watching some of it, and like at some point, once I think after like the Schwarber home run, I was like, yeah, well, whatever, like that's it. And I like started doing something else, and I went back like 20 minutes later, it was the same inning still, and like that stuff's just gonna happen, and like great, like anyone that wants to get worked up over is completely entitled to, but also like this is over. Like
yes,
there are good players that are still on the Orioles, and there are also a lot of players who they're going to lose because of, and like those two things are completely unrelated. And at this point, it's just playing out the string.
It feels like the rebuild in that the bullpen is going to lose you a lot of games down the stretch because the Orioles traded away 4 relievers before the deadline.
All good ones.
Brian Baker, Seranthony Dominguez, Andrew Kittredge, Gregory Soto. So that is half your bullpen that you are turning over. And quite frankly, the Orioles just don't have a whole lot of guys in AAA, as we've seen, that are ready to come into the big leagues and make an impact immediately coming out of the bullpen. So you're seeing games like last night where it's competitive for the first 5 innings, and then it completely unravels down the stretch. And that was the rebuild to a T. There were so many games. Now, there were some games that they would just be blown out from the start, and that was also the case with the 2025 Orioles for the first month of the season. But there were a lot of games that the Orioles were battling, they were fighting, and then they would get to a certain point in the bullpen, and it would just completely fall apart. And I think that we're in for a little bit of that in the final 2 months of the season. I know that's not what anybody wants to hear, but that is unfortunately the state of the roster right now.
Yeah, and you know, I've already heard from people that are trying to, you know, put a lot of weight into thinking, oh, they think they found the next so-and-so with this waiver claim. It's like, I don't think so. Yeah. I think there are some players that they are interested to see get extended time in the major leagues. And I think there are a lot more players who are literally just there because they exist. Like I had an untyped Slack message that I deleted because it was past the point of, I think after the Dietrich Enns trade, I typed, you know, there was obviously a lot going on Thursday night.
Yeah.
It didn't send like there's going to be so many of these scrubs coming in off, like just jumping off the train here in Baltimore in the next week. And that's how they're filling out their roster. That's what they need to do. I don't think they are sitting there being like, oh, these guys stink. Like, can't wait to DFA them all. But I also don't think they are claiming somebody and be like, well, we just traded Ryan O'Hearn. Here's the next one. Like, I think they're just trying to survive these next 2 months. I think there are players, like I said, you know, I think Jeremiah Jackson is somebody who they do want to see. And I think that's going to be a nice segue into what we want to get into next. But I would put him in a different category. And I think you're going to see a real reliever emerge from this somehow. I don't know who it is. I think there's been some good Cade Stroud moments, and I think that's good for business. But by and large, these are just live bodies and placeholders with a lot better furniture. And like, you know, the furniture of this house is a lot different than the furniture of the house that it was 8 years ago. But but there's still a lot of seat fillers. Yeah,
it's not Hanser Alberto and Renato Nunez and Rio Ruiz that are starting next to them. It's Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman.
It's not.
Yeah,
it's not them.
It's not them. All right, well, let's talk about the guys that they acquired at the deadline, because I think part of the reason we are seeing so many struggles from the big league team, at least in the bullpen in certain areas, the back end of the lineup, is because the Orioles did not acquire a single big leaguer. Of the 16 guys that they got back when they dealt 9 guys away before the deadline, they didn't get back a single big leaguer. They got back 1 draft pick and 15 minor leaguers. Let's discuss where those guys have been assigned to, because now we are starting to see the dust settle. We asked last week where all these guys would fit into the equation, fit into these rosters. We have an answer. Slater DeBrun, of course, was the first guy who was acquired. He was acquired as a draft pick, drafted, signed an overslot deal as a high schooler. He was assigned to the Florida Complex League, as expected for all these drafted guys. Cameron Foster, right-handed pitcher, assigned to AAA Norfolk. He's already made 2 appearances there that have not gone particularly well. 6 runs, 3 of them earned so far. Wellington Aracena, who slotted into the Orioles top 30, assigned to single-A Delmarva, had 4 2/3 scoreless innings, and was immediately promoted to high-A Aberdeen. Jerron Watts-Brown, another top pitching prospect that the Orioles acquired, assigned to Double-A Chesapeake, also has not had a great start in the Orioles system. 5 earned runs in 4 innings. Twine Palmer assigned to single A Delmarva. He was the tall righty. Wilfred De La Cruz, remember he was acquired as kind of a lottery chip for Andrew Kittredge, assigned to one of the two Orioles Dominican Summer League teams. He's just 17 years old, so a ways to go. Anthony Nunez, right-handed pitcher, assigned to Double-A Chesapeake, gave up 1 unearned run in 1 inning, and will be promoted to Triple-A Norfolk, according to MLB.com's Jake Rill. So got a guy on the move. Raymond Gomez assigned to High-A Aberdeen, right-hander. Another right-hander, Chandler Marsh, assigned to High-A Aberdeen. Already made an appearance, given up 2 earned runs in 1 1/3 innings pitched. Left-hander Boston Bateman, another top pitching prospect. I think he is the highest rated prospect, according to MLB Pipeline, that they did receive. That was in the deal that sent Ramon Laureano and Ryan O'Hearn to San Diego. Signed to High-A. Nope. Boston Bateman signed to single-A Delmarva, I should say. Cobb Hightower, also in that deal. Infielder signed to single-A Delmarva. He's got 1 hit, 2 walks in his first 2 games. Victor Figueroa, infielder, outfielder, also assigned to High-A Aberdeen, 2 hits in 2 games. Tyson Neighbors, right-handed pitcher, assigned to Double-A Chesapeake. Infielder Brandon Butterworth, still don't have an answer as to whether he is related to a particular syrup maker, assigned to Double-A Chesapeake.
Not going to get one either.
I don't know. John,
you're not going to get one. Sorry to break your rule. He's not going to say, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. Because you're never going to ask.
I don't know, John. I've asked some pretty strange questions.
You will never ask.
Let's not forget that I was the one to discover that Colton Cowser was really into Legos back in High-A Aberdeen, I think, at the time.
I remember that.
Where was I? Brandon Butterworth assigned to Double-A Chesapeake. He's already got a homer. It's okay. I'm taking off I drew myself off the rails there. Tanner Smith, right-handed pitcher, assigned to single-A Delmarva. Micah Ashman, the guy they got for Charlie Morton, left-handed pitcher, assigned to Double-A Chesapeake, giving up 1 unearned run in 1 inning. So, in all, the Orioles have 2 guys in Triple-A Norfolk, 4 in Double-A Chesapeake, 4 in High-A Aberdeen, 4 in single-A Delmarva, 1 in the Florida Complex League, and 1 in the Dominican Summer League. And when Mike Elias was asked after the trade deadline why or how the Orioles were not able to acquire more high-level prospects, guys that were in Double-A and Triple-A, he said, well, teams that are competitive often like to hold on to those guys because they're close to the big leagues, and those guys can be reasonably expected to impact the big league team sooner rather than later. However, he neglected to mention that at last year's trade deadline, he himself, as the GM of a competitive team, traded away a big leaguer in Austin Hayes in the Seranthony Dominguez deal, and 2 guys who were in AAA in Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby. So,
thank you for saying this, because you said it in Slack and I just left it alone. What are you saying? That's a good trade? Are we saying that he should have or shouldn't have done that?
No, I'm not. That's
okay.
Yeah. All I'm saying is he is saying, well, the reason we did not acquire guys who are closer to the big leagues is because competitive teams tend to hold on to those guys. But he was the GM of a competitive team last year, and he did not hold on to those type of guys. And I think we're seeing this year that with all the injuries the Orioles have had, they could have used guys who are close to the big leagues like Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby.
To have those guys specifically?
I mean, they
yes.
certainly absolutely would have liked to have Kyle Stowers right now.
And not the irony, like the thing that stands out about that trade is that they spent a lot of time leading up to that. Basically like 2 years, if you want to say this, maybe not as much in 2022, but definitely in 2023 and definitely in 2024. All these guys were complete non-starters, and they were literally bragging to me about how Austin Hayes starts 2024 slowly, injured, sick, lots of things going on with him. Cedric Mullins has a good stretch and is not very good for a while. And they were really, really happy with the fact that they looked at their surplus of outfielders and were like, we're not trading. Why would we trade Colton Cowser? Like, right. People want Colton Cowser, of course, because they think they can buy low and they think there's an opportunity to do this. But like, if you don't have a Colton Cowser when this happens, you're cooked. And they were really happy and really proud about that. And then they went and made a deal that I'm not going to say I don't care how many home runs and what Kyle Stowers ends up with. It's awesome that he's doing this, but like they also traded for a pitcher who is increasingly looking like one of the best pitchers in baseball.
It's true.
So like what? So it was useless when he was hurt and not pitching well. It didn't help the 2024 Orioles at all. And it didn't hurt them that Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby weren't there because of how they performed. They would have been better than running out like, Levon Soto a bunch on the infield. But I think the reason he said that, just because he did it and made it feel, and you could say that it was a mistake. I think that's kind of what he's getting at. I don't know. It was, they don't feel like the same. And I also think when he was asked that specifically, we already saw what a trade deadline looked like when you tried to get a lot of people who are close to the majors. That was in 2018. The Orioles acquired, of all the players they acquired, I think there were a handful of like lower level guys, but pretty much everybody was AA or AAA.
Yeah. Rylan Bannon, those type guys.
Yeah. I mean, I was sitting in the Bowie clubhouse in Gary Kendall's office when all those Dodgers, like 4 of them just showed up at once. They were all going right to AA. They were all supposed to be on the fast track. All the relievers, that they got to throw in reliever in every single one of these deals. And I think they all pitched in Camden Yards that year. Like, that is the type of thing that you get. And like Evan Phillips turned out to be good after he left here. Like Dean Kramer remains Dean Kramer. Dylan Tate was really good for a couple of years and not in the way that the Orioles, I think, envisioned at that point. But you really limit yourself when you're trying to get those type of players. Like, would it help? Yeah. What are you helping at this point? What are you helping at this point? Like, there's no difference between losing 72 and 78 games at this point. Like, those are winning 72 and 78 games at this point. And I think that those might be, I don't think those will be like overestimations, but if they keep losing, it will be. So, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. We're not talking like,
that's fair.
The damage is already done.
Breivik Valera,
get the good players you can.
Breivik Valera did not help the 2018 Orioles. Like, he was a throw-in in the Manny Machado deal.
Yeah, he was there.
He was there. He was a big leaguer. And I remember thinking that is probably the least likely to help this team, even though he was already in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And he didn't help this team. So he ended up actually having a cup of coffee with a couple other teams in the big leagues. So good for him. But yeah, I mean, the important thing is you get value. It's not that you get guys who are close to the big leagues. So I think while it would have been nice to get guys who are close to the big leagues that could help them next year, that's not what Mike Elias has been tasked to do. And that's not what he was trying to do. He was trying to get extract as much value from other teams as possible because, one, you want to keep that pipeline flowing, and two, you want to maximize, you can flip those guys in the offseason for other guys. The only thing is, like, when we look back at these trades, and this goes back to what Kyle Goon said last week, where I said, well, it's going to take a long time for us to evaluate the trade deadline and to determine if the Orioles got good value or not, because we won't know. We won't write the book on these guys' big league careers for like 10 years. And Kyle said, well, it really won't take that long, because if 2026 is a failure, if they are a losing team again, then this deadline was a failure. And I think that's a good point, in that the next year has to be a good season for the Orioles. And I don't know if it's not all incumbent upon last year's draft. It's not all incumbent upon this trade deadline. It's a combination of the trade deadline, the offseason, and everything involved there. Orioles fans don't want to go through another rebuild. They shouldn't have to go through another rebuild. So you can look back at a trade like 20 years after the fact and say, what did this team get? How much WAR did they get according to Fangraphs? And what did this team get? How much WAR did they get according to Fangraphs? That's all well and good, but nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything is context. Teams at the deadline trade more for guys that are going to help them get over the hump if they think that they're going to win a World Series. Like, if the Padres are somehow able to win a World Series and Ryan O'Hearn is the World Series MVP and Ramon Laureano is great, and it turns out in 5 years Boston Bateman is a Cy Young winner, I don't think they'll care. Like, that'll matter in 5 years, but it won't matter when they are parading down the streets of San Diego. So the value that you get isn't all, it's not like you get the same amount of value every year, and that's, you just add up the total wins and you did great. If you have more wins, then you have losses, and you have more WAR than you gave up, but you have to win games. So like the value that you get at this deadline has to turn into wins next year, whether it is these guys coming up and being impactful players, or they get you impactful players via trade. Next year just has to be a winning season. And whether these guys are part of that roster or not, that is the deadline for this front office specifically.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of like soft spots in that I want to poke at, and the first one
Poke at
is
my soft spots.
Yeah, like what
I am the Pillsbury Doughboy.
If you say you can't win the deadline by not unless next year's team is good, like does that mean there was no way to lose this deadline too? Because like if the Orioles were in Philly and Charlie Morton was pitching for them tonight, that would be a complete disaster. That would be stupid, and it would be dumb, and it would be pointless. Like that's just the fact. Like if the Orioles let Ryan O'Hearn walk with a qualifying offer and got the 32nd pick next year, they would not. That would be 4 or 5 fewer players than they got for trading him with Ramon Laureano, who they put with him to access a higher level of talent in a very talented Padres system. And now they have all those players too. I don't understand. I think it's wrong of me to say like, well, this is the reason why to take out the context of like this season being a disaster and being like, well, yeah, that's all a given, but it is a given now. Like, are you going to, speaking as somebody who has in portions of this season just completely like stuck my head in the sand and been like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like good players, good team, it'll work out eventually. Like I did that. And like, but they can't do that. They can't just say, oh, well, let's hang on to these guys. Maybe we'll win 78 games and everyone will say how tough and resilient we are. Like if we grind it out and finish near 500, like, or they could just do what they did, which was like objectively the right thing to do. I think there is, and I think it's worth addressing that when we're talking about trading these guys, there are a couple factors at play. So one of them is that it's just easier to trade guys that you traded for. That's just the fact that happens a lot. Those guys there's less like attachments to them organizationally. That feels like a thing that's also said a lot. I don't know if it's actually true, but I'm going to say, it feels like it's true. Also, the Orioles ran into an issue, and I think it was a little clearer. It's a little clearer now than it was 2 years ago when this was happening. But I think you saw it a little bit at last year's deadline too, where they developed players so well and so quickly that they basically had top prospects who were close to the major leagues. And that's it. Like there wasn't a B level or a C level in a way that was meaningful. And when your tier 2 is like 4 or 5 players who you feel maybe okay about, you don't really want to dip into that, because then your tier 3 becomes your tier 2 and you're all of a sudden, yeah, we have a great top of a farm system and every one of these guys is basically a nailed on big leaguer, but where's the rest of it? Where's the depth? I'm going to use names that and they're not watching, so who cares? But don't take it personally. But like a John Rhodes, like nice John guy. Rhodes is great guy. Referred to himself as a slapdick to me, which was really funny. At one point, he was talking about a friend he had who was playing in the draft league in Frederick, which is another thing we'll talk about at some point. He was like, yeah, and like he's telling me that like people go there all the time, and like nobody wants to come here and see a slapdick like John Rhodes. And it was like very funny. It was very, very funny, and we have the explicit tag for a reason to say slapdick, true, which I've now done 3 times. Yep. But like John Rhodes starts out with Colton Cowser and Kobe Mayo and Connor Norby in Aberdeen, and they accelerate. Cowser and Norby end up in AAA. Kobe Mayo goes to AA that year. Within a year's time of them, of like 18 months into their professional careers, Colton, like full seasons, Colton Cowser's in the big leagues, and Connor Norby is raking in AAA, and Kobe Mayo is putting together one of the best first halves in all the minors at Bowie, and like it's just going slowly, and people can see that. Like there was such a gulf grew between the top of the farm system and everything else, and there were a lot of factors in that. Not all how they drafted, but who they drafted, I think had a lot to do with it. And the pitchers were slower to develop and all got hurt coming out of COVID. Like that's just cost of doing business, and the lack of not being able until recently to really fully participate internationally. You just don't have that depth.
That to me is the biggest factor.
It's a huge, huge factor. That's how the Padres are able to make all these trades. And they draft a bunch of like high school guys, and like people are attracted to like the youth of all that. So you draft well, you sign internationally, all of a sudden you have that. The Orioles now do in a way that, you know, they would have anyways if they didn't make all these trades. But if you are trying to get a controllable starter, you're trying to get 2-3 years of a absolute dude in your rotation, like Boston Bateman gives you access to that. You know, I would say that Trey Gibson and Nestor Herman and Braxton Bragg before he got hurt, but like Michael Ferret gives you access to that too. And, you know, Ike Irish and all these the first day picks from the draft give you access to that. And all of these well-regarded players who were drafted high in the last couple of years who have put up numbers all the way through minor leagues. Obviously, they screen well on a computer because that's part of the Orioles process of identifying these guys. These are the players that give you access to that. So all this is to say that I think you don't, I think there's some nuance to what we're talking about. And if the Orioles are good next year, what they did last week is going to be 15-20% of why, and there's a lot of other things that are going to make it so.
Yeah, and I think the Trevor Rogers trade offers a lot of lessons from last year, and I don't want to hammer the Orioles for that trade because, as you said, this trade looks a lot different now than it did 4 months ago. This trade looks a lot better now. But the problem is the Orioles, what good teams, competitive teams often do, and this is what Elias is hinting at, it is you borrow from the future to pay for the present. And what the Orioles did with that move, unfortunately, they weren't intending to do so, but they borrowed from the present to pay for the present. They borrowed from guys that could help them immediately to pay for guys that could also help them. And it's the same thing that they did with the Sir Anthony Dominguez trade, although Austin Hayes was not good in the second half of that year. It was like, we went into that deadline thinking, all right, well, the Orioles are really going to start dealing these prospects. And then the first move they make is to deal Austin Hayes. And to me, that was just a little bit surprising because Austin Hayes was offering you current day value. It wasn't a whole lot. He wasn't starting every day. But I thought that the Orioles would trade some of their lower level minor league prospects. And they did make a move like that in the Zach Eflin deal. And that's a move where they traded Zach Horvath and Jackson Baumeister and were able to get back, and Matthew Etzel, was that the last one? We're able to get back somebody who helped them now. And that's the kind of move that ideally, as a competitive team, you make. And ideally, as a non-competitive team, you make in order to get future value. And if Mike Elias had hopped on the phone with these teams and said, we're only taking guys in the AA or AAA, well, guess what? You're not going to get their best prospects.
Yeah.
You're not going to get their top tier talent. So you can't limit yourself like that. But at the same time, you know, there are teams out there that are very cautious about trading guys who are like Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby because you need a deep roster, and those guys have roles in the big leagues.
Yeah, and I will say that, and part of, I think thinking back to the beginning of my speech, why I started thinking about that is because they did make those trades last year. This was, once that group got built up a little bit, there's a little more pitching, there's a little more. You're starting to see some international guys. Moises Chase is one of them. You start to also. And you can kind of judge this by the fact that they were doing like some 40-man roster prep hygiene last year and trading some guys and creating space.
Yeah,
that
that's
they were
a big part of
ultimately
it
going
too.
to need, because once these guys get to the point in their careers that, you know, you might need to get added. If you're not going to get added, you might as well trade them. If you don't think you're going to add them, if it's going to be hard to have somebody like Chase who's in high A performing really well, but is not going to help the Orioles for multiple years, you just do it. And they built up that depth, that tradable depth, not so much like the we're counting on you depth, the tradable depth. And then they traded a lot of it. And they needed to do that again. So not completely related, but it just kind of illustrates the point that these are the types of players. This is like the cast of the minor leagues that teams typically pull from.
Yeah, this system is a lot better now than it was 2 weeks ago. I think that's a big part of it. And I think that, you know, what the Orioles do with all these prospects, we'll see. But we now know where they are in their system. Let's talk about a prospect that is in AAA currently. Let's talk about Beavs. Let's talk about Dylan Beavers.
My guy, this is my favorite development. Nobody cared about Dylan Beavers back when I cared about Dylan Beavers, and now everybody cares about Dylan Beavers. And the irony is that I'm the one that's like,
Really?
right? No, as a player, yeah, like he should be here. It's completely pointless not to. And I'm not like, you would think if this is going to be, I'm not going to say personal vindication, but like if this is going to be something that will be professionally rewarding for me to see the fruits of this, all the work that he did and like the amount of fun I had talking to him about all the work he was doing, it will be cool when he's in the big leagues. And I know that will happen shortly. And it's like, I don't know that my own, and this might just be like Stockholm syndrome, but I don't know that my own perspective on this is the same as a lot of people's.
Yeah. Well, for a little bit of context, John has written a series of pieces about Dylan Beavers, who was drafted with the 33rd overall pick out of Cal and had always had a funky swing from the left-handed side. And knew it and was quick to acknowledge it. And he has gone to, as John has coined it, swing school in order to fix his swing. And it has paid huge dividends. There were times, I'm sure, where he did not and others did not feel like it was going to work. But somebody who has turned his all of his talent into becoming one of the Orioles' top prospects and has quickly risen up the ranks and now is in AAA hitting .307 with 16 homers, 22 stolen bases, and a .941 OPS in 85 games. And if you're looking at those numbers and you're saying the guy's in AAA, he's already played 85 AAA games, he's going to turn 24 in a bit. This team is going nowhere. We're watching Jeremiah Jackson, no offense, but he's made a few misplays in the outfield. We're watching him struggle in the outfield. Why isn't Dylan Beavers up here yet?
Let me say, like, I was thinking about it because I figured we were talking about this, and like when you're like, oh, Jeremiah Jackson's played like less than 10 fewer than 10 games in the right field in the minors, and it's like, oh well, that makes sense. They had more important and like better prospects that they wanted to play in the outfield, and they had him playing on the infield. And I'm like, wait, that's completely self-defeating for this argument. If Dylan Beavers is better and more important and is playing right field every day in AAA, maybe let him play right field in the big leagues. Yeah. Have an outfield of Beavers and Judd Fabian, Heston Kjerstad. Not a lot of room for the Jeremiah Jacksons. I would put Jeremiah Jackson to one side. He's having a really good offensive season. I also think it's a little unfortunate that, Colton Cowser, Tony Manzolino said this weekend, is going to stay in left as like a way to like one less thing, let him figure, like get his production going back at the plate and stay there, one less thing. But like Jeremiah Jackson is somebody who could theoretically be the Orioles bench infielder next year. He could be the solution to the Ramon Urias gap for $5 million less than Ramon Urias is going to cost next year, which is attractive when you're trying to spend money on pitching and build a team otherwise. And so I would put him to one side. Dylan Beavers and I think Samuel Basayo will both probably be up around August 15th. That's the day that you can get called up and not reach the service time requirement that would make you a graduate of prospect status and will put you in the PPI conversation. This is not reporting. This is just common sense. It's funny that, the service time conversation now happens in August instead of April.
Yes.
But I would just point out that this team is what it is. And, having a better right fielder for a week for the long-term games they could get is kind of pointless. And last year we spent a lot of time talking about Jackson Holliday's eligibility for the PPI and how that was going to influence the Orioles' decision-making. Does it? There's all the dumb stuff they did early in the season pointless because now he can get a full year of service time anyways. What a bunch of idiots, blah, blah, blah. And who is the player that almost got them the PPI pick? Colton Cowser. Colton Cowser, not a part of this conversation at all. So everyone's being like, oh, they're screwing with Basayo. Like they're, they asked you. I understand they asked you if you wanted to be like the emergency catcher one day.
They
like
did.
Anything other than Samuel Basayo, and everyone's, I think people kind of get that in a way that a little differently. But like we're talking about Basayo, and Basayo's going to get him a pick next year because he's going to rake and this and that, and like if there's even a 5% chance that Dylan Beavers comes up and does what he did, what he's doing now in AAA in the big leagues and sustains that through most of 2025 and has the potential to benefit the Orioles as an organization, what's the point of not taking that chance?
Right. So for the uninitiated, the PPI stands for Prospect Promotion Incentive. It was added to the CBA 2 years ago whenever they renegotiated. And essentially, it allows MLB clubs to earn a draft pick if a PPI eligible player accrues 1 year of service time as a rookie and then factors into a major award. So we're talking top 3 in MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, prior to qualifying for arbitration. So this is the incentive that allowed the Orioles to get a draft pick for Gunnar Henderson when he won Rookie of the Year. They used that draft pick, unfortunately, on Griff O'Farrell, who has not exactly been a world beater in high A Aberdeen. But it is essentially, if the Orioles wait until that August 15th day or a few days after that, and Dylan Beavers plays the rest of the season, he will still maintain his rookie eligibility for next year. And then if he plays phenomenally in 2026 and wins Rookie of the Year, then the Orioles will get a draft pick for him.
Yeah.
That is a lovely incentive. And John, I'm glad you brought up the irony that this rule that was added in order to get teams to promote their prospects faster is now being exploited by teams to keep prospects in the minor leagues for longer, because that's what teams will always find a way to do. And so the fact that it was meant to get teams to bring up their prospects earlier, to have them make the opening day roster so that they're not waiting until the middle of May to bring their prospects up, and so that they can hold on to them for an extra year of service time. This was to try to promote them, bringing them up faster. The problem is now when you have at the end of the year, these guys that if they were to get called up now and play the rest of the year, they'd lose their rookie eligibility, and then they wouldn't be eligible for a PPI pick like Dylan Beavers in this instance.
Yes.
Very ironic, but of course fitting.
And I'm also, I've been spending most of the time as you were going through all 700,000 prospects the Orioles traded for. I was trying to find, and I know they exist. I know I've written it. I know everyone's written it. I can't find it. How many plate appearances all these guys had before they were called up. Dylan Beavers has 368 AAA plate appearances this year. He had 1 week there last year. In the context of the Orioles feeling like guys are ready, that's probably on the lower end. Jordan Westberg was there for like 7 years. Kyle Stowers and
Ryan Mountcastle was there for a long time.
Exactly. He was there for a full season and
won the International League MVP.
Yeah. And that's a meaningful honor in
and
his
that
life.
will go
sure.
up on his mantle.
Yeah. Flags fly forever. I think Jackson Holliday obviously had fewer. Gunnar Henderson, I believe, had fewer. Adley Rutschman probably had fewer. I don't remember specifically. And I think that would probably be it. Maybe Colton Cowser. But all these, we're just having a lot of examples of people who had a little bit of a tough time. So
yeah,
we're not talking. I think he's more in the prospect level of like the Westberg and the Norby and the Kyle Stowers of like, yeah, you're doing great. And we're not in any rush. They wouldn't be in any rush otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think that's something to factor in too.
They will see Dylan Beavers up in the big leagues. Fans will see Dylan Beavers up in the big leagues at some point if he doesn't get hurt, knock on wood, in the next 2 weeks. He's going to get called up. And to me, he should be playing a lot in the outfield, in right field, specifically if they're going to keep Colton Cowser in left. Dylan Beavers, probably nothing more than an emergency center fielder.
Yeah.
He is going to be a right fielder, but he has steadily improved his offensive numbers. He's hitting for a lot more power than he used to be. He's always had speed. But I put this in Slack a few weeks ago, John. You look at Dylan Beavers' minor league career thus far, and my mind immediately goes to Kyle Stowers because they are both left-handed hitting corner outfield prospects who went to California schools, who were drafted right around the same spot. Kyle Stowers was taken with the 71st overall pick, I believe, in the 2019 draft, and Dylan Beavers taken with the 33rd overall pick. So Beavers a little bit of a higher drafted prospect. They're slightly different in that Stowers was always carrying more power than Beavers and not as much speed. You look at the minor league numbers of Beavers in his career so far, just over 1,500 plate appearances across all these leagues. 279 average, 42 homers, 840 OPS, 86 stolen bases. Kyle Stowers, in his minor league career with the Orioles, 1,700 minor league plate appearances. So he's got more than 200 more plate appearances. And he was a little bit older. He was 26 by the time he was traded to the Marlins. Dylan Beavers is going to turn 24 in about a week. Kyle Stowers' numbers in the minor leagues, 260 average, so lower average, almost twice as many home runs, actually more than twice the number of home runs, 91 homers, higher OPS, 870 OPS, but just 19 stolen bases to Dylan Beavers, 86. If you were to take both those guys, take out what we learned about Kyle Stowers since he got to Miami and the all-star season that he's had there, just try to put yourself back in your shoes when Kyle Stowers was a prospect. Would you rather have Dylan Beavers or Kyle Stowers as prospects?
I think the answer probably would have been Beavers I can't forget what we know now. But I think it's also Beavers because of what we know now. Kyle Stowers had a gap in his performance against like velocity specifically at the top of the zone. And he went to work to fix that after he got traded. And that's why he's doing what he's doing. Dylan Beavers was getting owned by fastballs up until this year. And they identified he and the Orioles hitting coaches. He lives in Sarasota, so he's just there every single day that he's allowed to be. He and the Orioles hitting staff and kind of identified that, if he was a little more like upright in his load instead of like swaying back a little bit, he used to like lean back a little bit and then you have to lunge forward. His timing would get off. So that's why you could see him hitting spin well and you could see him getting beaten by fastballs. Now all of a sudden he doesn't get beat by fastballs. He crushes fastballs. He's hitting them. That's what's happening right now. And when you are able to stay on the fastball, you're able to hit for power. You're able to hit for power at all fields. It's all the things he's doing. So when you take into consideration that those were two things that he's now shown, the ability to hit for that power. If we're just talking about the prospects and like what they were, not knowing that Kyle Stowers is an all-star in the NL Player of the Month and all this stuff, I think I would vote Beavers for the athleticism. He's a little more, the stolen base threat is obviously there. And I think where Kyle Stowers always slugged more, and probably even with what we're seeing from Beavers now, Dylan Beavers still might get like 500 more plate appearances in AAA. Probably not, but maybe. And like, then he would probably end up with similar like minor league slug as Kyle Stowers had. But I think the separator is they both walk a decent amount, but Dylan Beavers really doesn't chase and really doesn't swing and miss. And there was some chase to Kyle Stowers. He did walk, but he also had some chase and he had a lot of swing and miss. I think that was pretty clear. But it was a risk reward thing. And I think that we're just talking about a different offensive profile now that Dylan Beavers can do all the things that he used to be able to do, make elite contact and control an at-bat really well, and also drive the ball.
Think about all of the milking, pun intended, that the Orioles have done with Colton Cowser's name. Bringing a cow to the ballpark for a promotion that I unfortunately spilled the beans on. That was now as the Orioles are finally able to promote bringing the cow to the ballpark. But I tweeted out the video and went somewhat viral from @AllBanner Sports if you don't follow us already.
Yeah. Did it's like when Paul Walker stopped being a police officer and started working against the cops. It's just like that.
This is Fast and Furious. We have realized that we are living in Fast and Furious, and yeah,
we have.
Okay, so
are you
Paul
saying,
Walker
are you saying we're going to get Beavers at the ballpark? Is that
that's what I think is going to happen? I think that the Orioles are going to have some kind of beaver pen, and we're going to see Beavers at the ballpark. Especially if you have Cowser in left, Beavers in right. Think about the dueling fan sections there.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm sure that somewhere in the warehouse they are thinking about it, and they're thinking, how can we bring in a Beaver so that Paul Mancano will not get a video of them coming into the ballpark?
I feel like, and this is me speaking from an area of zero expertise, I feel like the transportation standards for bringing a Beaver out into the world are such that if they did it, it might not be obvious. I think there's probably like some kind of enclosure involved in a way that is not for a large cow that can just get itself there.
To be fair to myself, so in my defense, I found out about the cow because the security guards at Camden Yards were saying, "Did you see the cow that just came through?" And then we got up to the press box and we just saw the cow.
There
and
was.
Jacob Calvin-Meyer of the Baltimore Sun said, "Is that an effing cow? Is that a real effing cow?" And I censor myself, even though you already said somewhat of a curse word earlier. And we said, yes, it is. So that's how it got out into the world.
That is, I'm sure that was what everyone was thinking was going to happen as you're doing the last homestand before
before the trade deadline.
Yeah. But can we start it with a cow? Sure. Sounds great.
Take you behind the curtain there. All right. We should talk about one more thing. And I have on our notes here, John, but another behind the curtain thing here. I want to save our pitching conversation for next week because I think it is very good and it is going to involve a lot. John wrote a great piece inside the dugout on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months. In his newsletter, he went through the guys that the Orioles got at the deadline, some of the guys they're going to get back, and you had a great line in there about, now I'm giving it away, but about how the Orioles need to acquire top-level pitchers. They can't afford to dabble in anything else than the top tier of the market. And I want to have that conversation next week, but I also do want to discuss the news that Grayson Rodriguez, one of the Orioles' top arms, is officially out for the year after he is undergoing season-ending elbow surgery to solve a recurring impingement issue in that right elbow. So it is not elbow reconstruction surgery related to the ligaments, so it's not the UCL. According to Mike Elias, this surgery is a debridement to remove bone. So he is still expected to be ready for spring training 2026. But this just finally closes the book on what has been a true disappointment of a season for Grayson Rodriguez, who never pitched in a competitive game.
Yeah, it's a true bummer. I think knowing the answer on the elbow issue is good. I don't know the track record of success for this type of surgery. I imagine it's high. I imagine this is something that you just do, and hopefully he can be back and be, as Mike Elias likes to say, a full citizen of spring training. We're going to do something. I'm going to mention a name that and this is not an original idea. I don't remember where I saw it, but it kind of stuck with me. But I saw somewhere as this news was coming out that his career is starting to mirror Jack Flaherty's, and that, like, he came out really hot and, high school draftee, really good stuff, really, impressive. And then there's just a lot of things happen over the course of a couple of years, and all of a sudden, you think it's still there. You're not sure it's not there. You want it to be there, but how do you know it's there? Because he's not pitching. And then all of a sudden, this player is not, then they're gone. Grayson Rodriguez, I believe, is going to be ARB eligible this year, or if he wasn't already. Like, he's getting into that point of like, all right, man, like, let's get going. Let's figure out what we're doing here. Let's see what we got. Like, you're not young anymore. And yeah, so this is rookie year. He's pre-ARB. He's actually not. Geez, he might be a Super 2 next year. It'll probably be close to the line.
He's not a free agent until 2030, so there is some time.
Yeah, you just feel like this is like the type of thing that I don't know how long you go on if it's like this all the time. Like, are there worse things you can do than hold a roster spot for Grayson Rodriguez all offseason if you're worried that he's going to be hurt? A lot of worse things. Does the space that you hold in your heart for like in your brain for the idea that Grayson Rodriguez will help you, does that shrink as time goes on? Yeah. And like, when he's good, he will be a better person to pitch on the every fifth day of the rotation than most of the people the Orioles could bring in. The risk is that when you have all the work they need to do, and they kind of ran into this year, when you have to do all the work that they need to, what you're going to have. If you're saying, all right, we think we're going to have Bradish for 150 innings, like, we're going to have, that's
Dean Kramer.
Yeah, we know exactly what we're going to get from Dean Kramer.
Yeah,
exactly. And they're going to be able to quantify that and like stick it to the board and not move it for 6 months.
Yeah,
it's just going to be on there. And you don't know where you're going to put Grayson Rodriguez. You don't know how to slot him in. You don't know whether what you're doing is too much. If Grayson Rodriguez is healthy, I think you just kind of have to take it out of the equation. Like, not say it's a bonus, but it's kind of going to be a bonus.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. All right, we're going to do our minor league check-in in just a bit after this quick word from our sponsor.
For the 5th year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
All right, John, a little bit of a change of pace here for our minor league check-in. Instead of mentioning a specific minor leaguer, we're going to talk about the news that some of the affiliates are shifting around. The Aberdeen Ironbirds will no longer be an Orioles affiliate. They were the high A affiliate of the Orioles since 2020. Frederick Keys are back in the system beginning in 2026 as the Orioles high A affiliate. Our own Hayes Gardner and Justin Fenton have been working on this story for a while. A little bit of background. The Frederick Keys were the Orioles high A affiliate from 1989 to 2020. MLB downsized their minor league teams in 2020. They cut 43 teams. Aberdeen was then a short season single A team. So they would usually start up in July, August, and get all these guys who were just drafted, and they would just play 2 months worth of baseball. Then they switched to being the high A affiliate when the Frederick Keys left. There was still baseball being played at Harry Grove Stadium. It was the MLB Draft League, basically a lot of guys who were hoping to get drafted or were hoping to just like stick on with teams. So there were still games being played there. But Attain Sports now owns both the Keys and the Ironbirds. The Ironbirds used to be owned by Cal Ripken and his family. The Ripkens sold all but 10% last year. There was a little bit of back and forth between the city of Aberdeen and the Ripken family. Aberdeen's mayor felt that the deal that the city had with the Ironbirds was financially burdensome because they were on the hook for a lot of the stadium upgrades. So this kind of allows a restructured new deal with Attain Sports as opposed to the Ripkens for Aberdeen, where they can get the stadium upgrades that they want, but less of it goes, according to the mayor, less of it goes on the city of Aberdeen. So this is a lot of high level stuff. But basically, the Frederick Keys are getting the Orioles high A affiliate back, and Aberdeen could get a draft league team. We don't yet know. It would be a crime to not have baseball being played at Aberdeen because I love that field. I love Leidos Field at Ripken Stadium. I think it's awesome. And it's great for fans of Frederick who were pretty psyched about their baseball team for a long time to then get an Orioles affiliate back in town.
Yeah. It's going to be, it's going to be good to have Frederick back in the mix. I'm not, Aberdeen is closer to my house. This is how people are talking about it. Like this is how I think about it. It's easier for me to get to Aberdeen, but not that much easier anymore. I'm not going to get into the full commute, but I can just get on the highway. So, I don't have to drive through the city to get 70. It was a whole ordeal before. But it's great now. I am fascinated from a baseball standpoint. We know about the issues driving the ball in Aberdeen. Some people think Samuel Basayo just hit the ball over everything and don't have to worry about it. There are many, many more examples of people being really challenged to produce there. I think it takes a while to get used to it. You lose a lot of extra base hits. This is like baked in the cake now. Frederick, I believe, is the complete opposite in terms of like a hitting environment. I believe it's pretty short down the lines. I believe, and this is all, recollection from 5 years ago at this point. I believe it's pretty short down the lines. I believe it's a pretty nice ballpark to hit in. So the likes of, Ike Irish and some of these draftees from next year are going to be having a very different experience. They're still going to face more challenging pitching. I think what we're seeing this year from the Aberdeen hitters, especially, somebody like Vance Honeycutt, like the way that he's being pitched is so different than it was in college. You're just talking about a steep adjustment. We've seen Austin O'Vern kind of figure it out, and now he's going to Chesapeake. And I think both Ethan Anderson and Griff O'Farrell have kind of clicked in the second half a little bit, but it takes a lot of time. All that stuff is still going to go on. You're basically drinking from a fire hose when you're in your first full season. That league also has the other teams in it, the Rays, the Yankees, the Mets, the Phillies to an extent. All these teams are pitching dev organizations. So you're facing really good stuff all the time. But when you can sneak a ball down the line once a week while you're home and, maybe you clipped it, maybe you didn't get all of it, but it goes out anyways. All those challenges are a little easier to stomach than like when you're getting absolutely buried by good pitching and you're hitting balls like 105 at 25 degrees and they're not even making the warning track. Like all that stuff really can weigh on players, and that will not happen in Frederick. I think the opposite might happen. It might create some inflation, and honestly, who cares? Like
the people of Frederick care.
Yeah, no, I mean in a good way. Like they're gonna see a bunch of home runs, and like if we're sitting here in a year and Ike Irish has 20 home runs in Frederick, and I'm like, that place is, maybe some of those are easier to hit than
cheapies.
Yeah, not gonna matter even a little bit. And that's okay.
Yeah. I look at all the numbers of the prospects that went through the Orioles system and look at their numbers in Aberdeen and look how different they are from the rest of it. It is a pitcher's park.
Yeah,
there's also some weird stuff. Like it's a turf field. There's some potential there you usually don't play on turf fields in the big leagues or in other minor league ballparks. So it is a little bit of a different playing surface, and whether that prepares them or not, who's to say? But all that said, great that Frederick is getting a team back, getting an affiliate back. They've always had a team, but getting an affiliate back. And I still plan on going to Aberdeen at some point because I love getting crabs in the right field corner there. It's great. All right. That just about does it.
You can call and tell me all about it.
That just about does it for the Banner Baseball Show. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Tell your friends about the Banner Baseball Show if you so enjoy it. You can watch us live each week on Facebook, YouTube, or X, and listen to us after the fact on any of your favorite podcast platforms. At John Meoli is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Subscribe to the Banner, where you can get all great coverage from John and Danielle Allentuck, Andy Kuska, and Kyle Goon. $1 for 6 months. Thanks so much for